Remember when going downtown wasn't just about shopping, but about sitting down for a hot meal that smelled so good it felt like part of the experience? There was a time when department stores, cafeterias, diners, and even airplanes treated meals like rituals. You didn't grab a plastic wrapped sandwich or rush through a food court. You sat down, picked up real cutlery, and ate something that felt warm, comforting, and made with intention. Whether it was a steaming plate of pot pie after walking through Eaton's, a grilled cheese at Woolworth's with your grandmother, or a steak dinner served at 30,000 feet like you were royalty even in economy, these meals weren't just food. They were the glue holding family weekends, childhood memories, and Canadian community life together. Before we go deeper into this journey of vanished Canadian meals, tell me in the comments, which classic meal do you remember the most? Pot pie, grilled cheese, a hot turkey sandwich, or something else entirely? And if you're loving these Canadian nostalgia stories, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell because we've got so many more forgotten memories to bring back to life. It's funny how these meals felt ordinary at the time. Simple comfort food, a plate you didn't think twice about because it was always there. But now looking back, it feels like another lifetime. These meals represented moments, slow afternoons, cozy shopping days, family routines, and rituals that made ordinary weekends feel like something special. They were warm, familiar, and comforting in ways that modern fast food simply can't replicate. And that's where our first lost Canadian meal begins. Walk into an old downtown Eaton's and the smell alone guided you to the grill room before you even saw the door. The Eaton's grill room chicken pot pie wasn't fancy, but it felt special. Golden crust, bubbling gravy, mashed potatoes, peas, and coffee served in a thick Eaton's mug. It was comfort on a cold day, a slow, warm pause in busy lives. Families bonded there. Workers escaped there. Tourists discovered Canada there. And when Eaton's closed in 1999, the pot pie vanished, taking an era of cozy department store dining with it. Then there was the Simpsons cafeteria hot turkey sandwich, served on Queen Street in Toronto. This wasn't your average cafeteria food. This was carved right in front of you turkey. Thick slices layered between white bread and drowned in gravy so rich it tasted like Thanksgiving on any day of the year. You'd collect your tray, watch the carver work behind glass, and then find a window seat overlooking Queen Street. Office workers loved it, holiday shoppers swore by it, and anyone who tasted it remembered it. But when Simpsons merged with the Bay, cafeterias vanished quietly, replaced by food courts with plastic trays and fewer memories attached. Weekend mornings across Canada revolved around the Zellers Big Z breakfast, the kind of breakfast moms and dads trusted because it filled everyone up without emptying wallets. 2 eggs, bacon or sausage, toast, golden hash browns, bottomless coffee refills, laminated menus, red vinyl booths, every element made it feel solid, familiar, and wholesome. Families made it their Saturday ritual, kids coloring, parents planning the day. But when Zellers struggled and eventually folded, the Big Z breakfast vanished with it, leaving behind an empty space where a reliable family tradition once lived. If Eaton's felt classy and Zellers felt familiar, the Woolworth's grilled cheese and tomato soup felt like the heart of every shopping trip. Kids would swing on chrome stools, grandparents ordered pie, steam rose from the tomato soup, and the grilled cheese was simple perfection, golden brown, buttery, gooey. These counters were intergenerational meeting places. But as five and dime stores faded out, lunch counters disappeared, leaving behind millions of childhood memories but not a single stool to sit on. Out west, Woodward's 149-day hot plate turned shopping into a theatrical event. You could smell the meal from the escalator: roast chicken, meatloaf, vegetables, steam swirling under bright lights. The food floor felt alive with shoppers and families grabbing a plate before or after hunting for bargains. This was when grocery stores felt communal, warm, and human. But when Woodward's collapsed, its hot plate disappeared, like a story people still tell at dinner tables. Kmart had its own classic, the Kmart banquet burger and fries. A simple burger, thick enough to feel like a diner meal, served in a red plastic basket with a scoop of slaw and ketchup bottles waiting at the table. You'd order after buying winter boots or back-to-school supplies. It wasn't gourmet, but it was dependable. When Kmart stopped selling in-store meals and food courts took over, the banquet burger faded. Meanwhile, families celebrated birthdays and big nights out at the Ponderosa steak and all-you-can-eat salad bar. Kids piled plates high with macaroni salad, Jell-O cubes, beets, and croutons. The steak came sizzling. Parents felt like they were giving their family a treat without overspending. These places weren't just restaurants, they were affordable celebrations. But buffet culture collapsed under changing tastes and rising costs, taking Ponderosa with it. And then there was the earliest version of mall comfort food, the Chinese-Canadian mall combo Umr 3. You could find it in every early food court: sweet and sour pork, fried rice, chicken balls, glowing under heat lamps, scooped into styrofoam clamshells. It was cheap, delicious, and a weekly ritual for countless families. But as malls evolved and rents rose, these mom-and-pop counters disappeared, silently taking Combo and Throw 3 with them. Meals weren't limited to ground level. Flying used to be glamorous, even in economy. If your family flew Wardair, you remember this one: the Wardair in-flight steak dinner, served with real cutlery, linen cloths, and desserts wheeled down the aisle on a cart. Air travel felt special. Kids got wings pins, parents relaxed, and the meal was part of the magic. Today, it's a story of a vanished golden era. Rail travel held its own treasure: the prairie dining car pot roast plate. Sitting in a train's dining car as the prairies rolled by outside felt like something from a movie. White tablecloths, brass lamps, waiters refilling coffee without asking. The roast beef, the baked potato, the warm rolls, simple, delicious, unforgettable. But as VIA rail scaled back, dining cars became luxuries, not standards. From train cars to church basements, the church basement tuna noodle casserole was the taste of fundraisers, funerals, Friday nights, and every community gathering imaginable. Egg noodles, canned tuna, peas, cream of mushroom soup, crushed chips on top. It wasn't fancy, it was social glue. But as home cooking trends shifted, it vanished. The deeper you go into these vanished meals, the more you realize how each one held a small part of Canadian life inside it. They weren't just dishes. They were moments wrapped in warmth, routines built into weekends, small pauses that made ordinary days feel grounded and familiar. These weren't gourmet meals or fancy celebrations. They were the foods that made life feel steady. The plates you didn't need to photograph to remember, because the memories attached to them were already enough. And as each one disappeared, it wasn't just the meal that faded, it was the feeling that came with it. Across Canada, the church basement tuna noodle casserole wasn't just a dish. It was a ritual. Egg noodles, canned tuna, peas, and cream of mushroom soup baked under crushed chips, served in Pyrex dishes at fundraisers, funerals, and community events. Its smell filled whole rooms with memories. But as potlucks faded and catered trays replaced homemade food, this humble casserole slipped quietly into nostalgia. Then there was something far stranger and yet deeply familiar: the neon green wobble of the lime Jell-O sunshine salad. This wasn't just dessert, it was a mid-century showpiece. A gelatin mold filled with cottage cheese, canned pineapple, sometimes even shredded carrots, all suspended like tiny artifacts inside a glowing ring. It appeared at holiday dinners, baby showers, and church potlucks, carefully unmolded onto a bed of iceberg lettuce. It was equal parts impressive and confusing, but it was love because someone always made it with pride. As food culture shifted toward fresh, vibrant dishes, the sunshine salad became a relic of a different era, an era where effort mattered as much as taste, and presentation meant something different than it does today. School cafeterias had their own lost treasure in the form of the mock chicken leg cafeteria plate. It wasn't chicken, it wasn't even pretending hard, but it tasted good. Seasoned minced meat shaped around a stick, breaded, fried, and served beside mashed potatoes, canned vegetables, a milk carton, and an applesauce cup. Kids didn't care what it was made of. They just knew it was crispy, salty, and fun to eat. Lunch ladies served it with a smile, and the entire plate cost barely anything. But as nutrition guidelines tightened and school menus modernized, The mock chicken leg disappeared. For many Canadians, it remains one of the clearest food memories of childhood. Before microwaves dominated every kitchen, there was a revolutionary kind of convenience meal. The boil-in-bag TV suppers. Little plastic pouches filled with turkey slices, beef tips, or chicken and gravy. You drop the pouch in boiling water, clip it to the pot with a clothespin. Wait 15 minutes, then pour dinner onto a plate. It was quick, easy, and felt futuristic. Parents loved the simplicity. Kids loved the novelty. But once microwaves became standard and frozen dinners took over, the boil-and-bag meal faded quietly. Yet for a brief moment in the late 70s and early 80s, it felt like modern cooking had arrived. Not every vanished meal was simple. Some were symbols of a more theatrical kind of home entertaining. In the 1970s, nothing made a suburban host feel more sophisticated than fondue night beef bourguignon. The bright orange fondue pot sat in the middle of the table with hot oil or broth, long skewers dipping cubes of beef that sizzled as they cooked. The dips, the baguette slices, the salads, everything came together in an experience that was interactive and fun. Guests cooked their own bites, conversations flowed easily. Laughter filled the room. It was social dining at its peak. But as tastes shifted toward quicker meals and lighter foods, the fondue pot was pushed to the back of the cupboard, eventually becoming a nostalgic relic of a warm, communal era. Restaurants had their own version of showmanship, especially in hotel dining rooms where a waiter would arrive with a rolling cart for tableside hotel flambé steak Diane. Thick cuts of steak pan-fried in butter, finished with brandy and cream, lit dramatically tableside as a blue flame danced over the pan. It was dining as theater. Couples celebrated anniversaries. Families marked promotions. It was the height of mid-century glamour. But rising insurance concerns, staffing costs, and changes in fine dining trends extinguished the flambé cart. The flames that once lit up hotel dining rooms now exist only in memory. Then there was the unmistakable smell of the company potluck meatballs in grape jelly and chili sauce, simmering in a crock pot on a break room counter. Sweet, tangy, oddly addictive, the meatballs were a staple of office holiday parties and retirement gatherings. Someone always brought them. Everyone always ate them. The aroma drifted down hallways before events even started. It was comfort food made for groups, perfect in its simplicity. But as workplaces shifted to catered lunches and stricter food safety rules, homemade potlucks slowly disappeared, taking the grape jelly meatballs with them. On prairie weeknights, kitchens filled with the sound of frying onions as families made prairie pierogies with fried bologna. Frozen pierogies boiled then pan-fried in butter with onions until golden and crisp, served alongside thick slices of bologna, fried on both sides until the edges curled. It was cheap, hearty, and comforting. The kitchen window would fog up, the skillet hissed, and the smell felt like home. But diet trends changed. Fresh ingredients became more accessible. And fried bologna quietly moved from staple to guilty pleasure to memory. Small-town diners across Canada served a classic that carried exhausted parents, truckers, shift workers, and hockey families through countless evenings. The small-town diner's Salisbury steak plate, a ground beef patty covered in mushroom gravy, mashed potatoes on the side, a medley of canned vegetables, all served on a blue-rimmed diner plate beside a chrome napkin holder. It was warm, predictable, filling exactly what weary people needed. But as diner menus modernized, wraps replaced pot roast, salads replaced canned vegetables, and the Salisbury steak faded like an old photograph. And finally, nothing captures community cooking like the Legion Hall Friday fish fry. Once a weekly ritual in towns from the Maritimes to the prairies, it brought people together for battered fish, crinkle-cut fries, tartar sauce, and coleslaw served cafeteria-style on styrofoam trays. Volunteers knew customers by name. Kids waited impatiently for dessert squares. Neighbors chatted at long tables under fluorescent lights. But volunteer burnout, rising costs, licensing pressures, and shifting social calendars reduced Friday fish nights from weekly traditions to occasional events, and eventually many disappeared entirely. The memories begin to blend together into something soft and warm, like the comfort of walking through an old mall on a winter afternoon, or sitting in a booth while steam fogs the window. These meals weren't flashy, and they weren't meant to impress anyone. They were the everyday glue that held families together, the small rewards in the middle of long shopping trips, the familiar flavors that made ordinary days feel grounded. Each plate had its own story, its own texture, its own quiet place in the rhythm of Canadian life. And as each one disappeared, it left behind not just an empty space on a menu, but an empty space in the way we lived. You can almost picture the trays and folding tables of a community hall when the church basement tuna noodle casserole made its entrance. Volunteers carried Pyrex dishes wrapped in tea towels, steam rising as someone lifted the foil off. Kids lined up with plates, the smell of mushroom soup and buttered noodles filling the room. Conversations echoed across the hall as people sat together, sharing food that tasted like home because it was made by someone who lived just down the street. But as communities grew larger and more spread out, the simple casserole, once the heartbeat of fundraising dinners, slowly faded from the weekly rhythm. At family gatherings and holiday events, there was always that one dish people whispered about before it hit the table, the lime jello sunshine salad. Its bright, wobbly glow announced it long before it arrived. Set into a ring mold, thick enough to hold cottage cheese and pineapple suspended inside, it looked like something out of a vintage cookbook, both strange and charming. People sliced it politely, even if they weren't quite sure whether it belonged beside the ham or the dessert squares. It was a dish that required effort, patience, and a certain kind of pride. And yet, as tastes evolved and households moved away from gelatin molds, the sunshine salad became first a joke, then a relic, and finally a memory. For school kids, nothing captured the spirit of cafeteria lunches more than the mock chicken leg cafeteria plate. The excitement didn't come from what it actually was. It came from how it tasted and how it felt. That crunchy breaded coating, the soft bite of seasoned meat inside, the wooden stick that made it fun to hold. Served beside mashed potatoes, applesauce, and a small carton of milk, it felt like a meal that belonged to childhood. Kids traded bites. Friends compared which cafeteria's version was best, and teachers joked about it while keeping the lunch line moving. But when nutrition rules tightened and casseroles gave way to salads and sandwiches, the mock chicken leg quietly disappeared from lunchrooms across the country. Before microwaves took over every kitchen counter, families turned to the boil-in-bag TV suppers as a modern miracle of convenience. Parents clipped pouches to boiling pots, while kids watched from the table, amazed at how dinner seemed to appear from a plastic pouch. It wasn't fancy, but it tasted warm and comforting, especially on busy weeknights. The smell of turkey gravy or beef tips filled the kitchen, while the pot rattled softly on the stove. These meals felt futuristic at the time, promising a new era of easy cooking. But when microwaves became staples and frozen TV dinners dominated grocery stores, the boil-in-bag supper quietly slipped away, remembered fondly by those who witnessed its brief moment of glory. If the boil-in-bag supper belonged to busy weeknights, then fondue night beef bourguignon belonged to special weekends. The fondue pot sat glowing in the center of the table, surrounded by little bowls of dips and long forks that made every guest feel involved. Beef cubes sizzled in hot oil, the room filled with laughter and the smell of broth and butter. It felt sophisticated, even glamorous, but also cozy, like a meal that encouraged conversation, participation, and moments that lingered. Couples used to host fondue nights as if they were hosting events, each dinner turning into a memory. But as home entertaining changed, fondue pots were pushed into cupboards, replaced by quicker meals and simpler gatherings, taking their warm glow with them. Meanwhile, in hotel dining rooms across major Canadian cities, dinners were once elevated by drama and flame. The tableside hotel Flambe Steak Diane arrived with a rolling cart and a waiter who seemed part chef, part performer. The creamy sauce, the brandy, the flickering flame, you didn't just eat dinner, you watched it being created right in front of you. Couples celebrated anniversaries with it. Business travelers felt a little more glamorous because of it. But as insurance rules tightened and restaurants moved towards simpler, modern plating, the flambe cart became a relic wheeled into storage rooms, taking with it the theatrical magic of a bygone dining era. Office parties and break room gatherings had their own famous staple: the company potluck meatballs in grape jelly and chili sauce. They simmered for hours, the smell drifting down hallways long before the event officially began. Everyone recognized the scent, even if they pretended they didn't know what it was. Sticky, sweet, spicy, comforting. These meatballs gathered coworkers around slow cookers and folding tables, sparking conversations that didn't feel forced. But as workplaces changed and potlucks gave way to catered trays and safety restrictions, the crockpots disappeared, and along with them, the humble meatballs that kept office parties alive. On the prairies, comfort food didn't need explanation, just a cast iron skillet, onions, and a little time. The prairie pierogies with fried bologna supper was a midweek staple for countless families. Pierogies boiled soft, then fried until golden, while onions sizzled in butter and slices of bologna curled and crisped at the edges. The smell filled every corner of the house, warming sweaters and fogging windows. It was cheap, filling, and familiar. And as diets changed and fresher ingredients became the new standard, this crispy, buttery plate quietly slipped into the background of memory. Small-town diners had their own dependable favorite, the small-town diner Salisbury steak plate, a warm booth, mushroom gravy, mashed potatoes, and a canned vegetable medley, nothing fancy, but everything comforting. After hockey games, long shifts, or winter drives, this plate greeted Canadians like an old friend. But as diners modernized and menus shifted toward wraps and salads, the Salisbury steak faded away, replaced by newer tastes that never carried the same warmth. And no Canadian tradition is missed quite like the Legion Hall Friday fish fry. Families, neighbors, and whole towns lined up for battered fish, crinkle fries, tartar sauce, and coleslaw served on styrofoam trays. Kids ran between tables, seniors chatted, and volunteers worked the fryers with practiced rhythm. The smell of fried fish drifting across the parking lot was part of the ritual. But as volunteer numbers dropped and costs rose, weekly fish nights became monthly, then rare, then gone. Looking back at these meals, you realize it wasn't just the food, it was the feeling, a slower rhythm of life. Families sitting together without screens, a casserole in a church basement, a diner booth on a cold night, even an airline seat where meals felt special. These dishes were stitched into the fabric of growing up in Canada, small ordinary moments that became extraordinary memories. The church basement tuna noodle casserole brought communities together. The lime jello sunshine salad stood proudly at family celebrations. The mock chicken leg cafeteria plate defined school lunches. Boil and bag TV suppers warmed busy evenings. Fondue night beef bourguignon made weekends special. Tableside hotel flambe steak. Diane added theater to dining rooms. Company potluck meatballs and grape jelly and chili sauce lived in every break room. Each one vanished quietly, but their memories remain warm, slow, familiar reminders of a Canada that lived at a gentler pace. If any of these meals sparked a memory, tell me in the comments which one you'd bring back. And if you enjoyed this journey through Canada's forgotten flavors, like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for more nostalgic deep dives.